There's so many layers to this too, though. And I'm not an expert on this, and I don't know the exact details, but if we think about it and we let these migrants come in, it has an exponential effect on our economy. But, we're worried about Social Security, right? What happens when these people come into our country and they're given benefits? How does that affect Social Security, which is essentially running out at this point? I mean, we can do a whole nother podcast on this, but I'm interested. I want to know, and I don't know if you have any information on that or have looked into that or thought about that.
I don't have information on Social Security, but I did look up. Just give me a second. There was an estimate on, I think it was the financial impact of having 14 million illegals living here. It was like over $1 billion a year.
Yeah, I mean, we can, like I was telling Mike, I would love to do like a multiple part series to this. I'm making notes. So I want to go back, I want to do a ton of research on this because it's not as simple as, crossing the border. This is such a deep subject.
Because you're dealing with every aspect of life at this point. You're dealing with the human aspect. So you're bringing emotions, you're bringing sympathy and empathy into it, but then you're also bringing in the financial burdens that come with that. You're dealing with the criminal elements that come with that. So there's so, like you guys have said, that there's so many layers to it that one conversation doesn't. And I don't know if we'll ever have the answers. And I think that's the problem, where there has to be a decision made to, once it's a political statement now, but make America first again. So, if America is first, we have to worry about what's in our own house. But before we can't, who are we to take care of other people's or other countries' people if we can't take care of our own?
Right. It's like not feeding your kid and, you send their dinner down the street to somebody else.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. And you want to help people. And it changes when you're face to face with these people, because it's a human being. But this is not the answer, doing it this way.
Right. And, I think where the right wing really kind of loses credibility is when they really kind of exacerbate we're bringing nothing but drug dealers and gang members over. And they really, they hone in on that. Yes, there's bad people. Gosh, we have enough bad people in the United States, and we don't need any more. However, I do think that's such a small percentage of what's coming, although it only takes, two people that know how to fly a plane, unfortunately, right? So I mean, one is too many, especially when you're talking about the terroristic element of it. However, I really think that's where the right kind of loses people, is they focus on that. And then you get that extreme where let's talk about the issue itself of people who honestly want a better life. How can we do that? But without, sacrificing those that are here.
Yeah, that's, if somebody can figure that out, it would be good. I don't know. We don't have control over the Central American countries, and that's the key, I don't.
But would you agree why it hasn't been figured out is because conversations like we're having, they don't happen because you're either far left or you're far right, and you have to dig your feet in the sand. So you're taking this stance based on I don't want to say, well, I'll say it, a radical, endpoint and you're not willing to listen to the other side.
Right. That's a big beef of mine. We need to find, there is common ground. I have friends that are very liberal. I'm conservative. Sure. I describe myself as a centrist with a conservative lean.
I like that.
I'm a Libra and I balance everything. I can see both sides. So, but I've had discussions with them, and you can find common ground. You can find an overlap, at least. You're not going to agree on everything, maybe, but you have to start somewhere, and you can start with that overlap that you do have, that you can agree on. But I've literally been in conversations with people when they bring up politics, they literally kind of go like this. And they don't want to discuss it.
Sure.
That's a problem.
It's interesting to think about when I was growing up and hearing like, you don't mix religion and politics, and you heard all these old timers talk, saying that, oh, and I just disregarded it. But you don't really understand the effect of, like what they were talking about. It must have gone back to like the Cold War and all that kind of stuff. And now you're really seeing like, that's why we don't talk about politics and religion. Like,
Right. Well,
our families are like, and because of social media, are torn apart over stupid political talk. It
is a shame.
go
I've
too far
lost
off.
friends. I think we've all lost friends that I had one that I considered family. We were that close, and it's a sin. Deep down, if you remove the politics, you still like that person. Like, I've never done that to somebody. I may not
Right.
agree with you. I may think whatever, maybe you're misinformed, or maybe I can learn something from you, but we're not going to learn anything if we don't talk to people and you just shut people out.
Sure.
Like the deep hatred that people you'd never expect would come out of them. You can feel the deep hatred. And yeah, in terms like, learn the science. I'm so sick of hearing, and I know we use it all the time, but like, you're misinformed and like all these, like, I just want to escape.
There's
this.
catchphrases.
I
right?
want to escape this time and go back to like 1993. I am so sick and tired of it. And before I forget, sorry, off the top of my head, while we've been doing this podcast, I've been sending messages. Coming to our discussion soon, the term is illegal maritime migration.
Ooh.
Okay, so that's coming to a podcast soon, and we'll figure out if you want to come back on that one, if we want to do it separate with the former Coast Guard person, and then we can grow this series, and maybe you can learn something. We all learn something about this, because that's they won't call it human trafficking or human smuggling. The correct term, and the only term they can use, is illegal maritime migration.
Oh, wow.
It sounds good.
There's the language again.
Right.
Language.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been informed over the last 10 minutes. I've been checking my messages on my watch.
Educated.
Yeah.
So, let's get back to, the reason for the divide and the reason why we're not going to, solve this problem. And would you agree that because of the lack of transparency, that causes huge issues within the political realms, both factions? And what I mean by that specifically is, we know that there's flights that are taking off from Texas, and people are being resettled in the Midwest, in Florida, New York, California, and the federal government just doesn't want to talk about that. Why is that? If that's what's happening, why wouldn't they let us know that?
If they're not talking about something, it means they don't want you to know, which to me tells me you're doing something wrong.
Sure.
And there are people that are trying to report on it. The transparency has been, or lack of, has been very frustrating to many of us. And it really does give you, it's suspicious, makes you suspicious, and then you lack trust.
Well, let's face it, the Haitians under the bridge in Texas, Fox News was the only news station that was covering that. Yep. CNN, MSNBC, they didn't want anything to do with it until I think the last couple of days of it. They might have run maybe a 2 or 3 minute blog on it, but Fox News was there. Why can't our media get on board? Why does the media even have to be so divided by political realms? News is news.
And what happened to them, by the way?
Well, from what we hear, and maybe you can expound upon this, but from what I've read is some of them got sent back. Some of them have been relocated in the Midwest and Florida.
My best friend lives in Texas, and he's just been sending me updates. They went from 80, 90 degrees. They're down into the 30s.
Wow.
And it's swinging. So, I mean, it's getting dangerous for them.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of them, I don't know the number. I know they did send a lot back, but they did absorb a lot into the country also. And again, they haven't been real transparent with the numbers, but I have read it. I just didn't retain the numbers. What I found was interesting. Some of these Haitians kind of did themselves in. They shot themselves in the foot. They had, because they've been living in Central America for so many years, they actually had official ID from Chile and Brazil
Okay.
and all these countries, right? And they dumped their ID. There's photos of all their IDs being dumped on the other side of the border. Their plan, I guess, was to, once they got across, claim asylum because Haiti is such, I'm Haitian. And so they got deported back to Haiti, which is where they weren't living, which they had problems when they got there then
Right.
because they hadn't been living.
And just
Right.
for Americans that aren't up to date, the Haitian president was assassinated in the past year, and they're essentially in collapse. Or, I mean, I guess they've always been considered third world, but it's not good.
Fragile over there, very fragile. And very violent too. I've been trying to follow, like I do this part-time. I have a full-time job too.
So do we.
It's really hard to kind of, people will ask me like, I'm not following that one so closely.
Right.
I try. But the violence in Haiti is, there's gangs that are kidnapping. Well, we had Americans kidnapped there.
Right.
And I apologize. I don't know what the follow-up to that is. I don't know.
Well, they
They were
wanted something like
demanding,
$1
yeah.
million for, there was 12 of them or something like that, right? Those were the social workers or the
Yeah.
The
And I don't know what
missions.
happened.
mission.
Yeah,
Right.
missionaries. Yeah.
It's been a
Okay,
little
we'll
crazy.
follow up on that. Missionaries in Haiti. Okay.
Yep.
I'll have to do some checking.
But on that topic though, what I wanted to ask you is, as large of and sensitive as a topic as this is, I wanted to really talk about and zero in on the child trafficking aspect of it, and not just across the border, but within the United States. And have you researched that or reported on that?
In the United States, no, but I do know that people pay smugglers to take their children. They'll just hand them over to a smuggler and say, here, take them. And we've reported on several stories where, you capture, the CBP cameras capture video of a smuggler like dropping a 3-year-old off the, down the border, or climbing down and and they just abandon them.
Right.
And the smugglers, people are a commodity. If you get sick or, you get injured, they abandon you. The group just moves on and leaves you.
Yeah, I guess specifically what I was hinting at or getting to is sex trafficking.
There is. I have not, to be honest, followed it, because once they get here, if you are in that smuggling, operation, they do traffic people, but specifically, I have not been following that.
Well, I know what they do primarily is you'll get assigned to a group, and those group run circuits, and that's where I think it's Craigslist and Backpage and all these other insidious type sites where you can find this black market sex trafficking work. They move around. They're not in one spot for too long. I know I had another business at one time where I did laser tattoo removal, and I had the opportunity to with a client that was actually tattooed by her captor.
Wow.
And she was able to escape. She found refuge, and I was actually removing the tattoo, which was an X and an M that was right on her inner thigh, and that's how
Wow.
they marked they're marking people like cattle.
Why am I just not hearing
Wow.
the story?
It
Oh
never
my
came up in
gosh.
conversation, I guess, but
Wow.
but it really is. It's horrendous, because she came up. She had come up from Mexico, and she thought that she was going to live with her cousins. I think she's, and this was several years ago, so I apologize, but I believe her cousins were in the California area, but she ended up in the Midwest. And because she you cross the border, you don't know which way is north, south, east, west, right?
Yeah.
And she went with this group, and next thing you know, she's in a sex ring, and she's getting beat every night, and they
Yeah.
force you into submission. It's a horrible life.
So yeah, it's a whole different
That's a whole different show.
subject topic
Right.
than
Yeah.
just migrants. I mean, there are American kids that are kidnapped and
Yeah.
put into sex trafficking,
Sure.
and that's really what I was referring to in that question. And that's, maybe we can all work on that together. I would really love to help expose that. I know, like, getting into the rabbit hole stuff and the Q stuff about the whole sex trafficking connected to like deep state and all that kind of stuff. I want to keep digging on that, because I know there's truth to some rumor, there's got to be something there. I still want to find it.
Well, I think over the last year or two, not this past year, previous administration, I think they made a lot of advances in cracking down on some of the sex trafficking. The sex trafficking, as you had mentioned children specifically, but adults really is what I know. And that is part of the debt bondage. If you don't have the money to pay the smuggler, then you could be trafficked, in that way also. That's definitely part of that part. Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah, it really is. And it's infinite. I don't think there's a foreseeable end to any of this. It's going to continue on until people actually start having conversations like we're having, people that matter. Unfortunately, I don't want to discredit you, but Randy and I don't matter. You don't matter, because we can't make the decisions, right? I mean, if we were running the state, if we were running the country, I really feel like people like us, if we were in positions of leadership, we could actually do something proactive. And
because we're not thinking of an agenda, we're thinking of doing the right thing.
I'm not, beholden to any lobbyist or whatnot. It's, you want to do right. You want to make the right decisions for the country in which you love, and while being empathetic to the plight of our brothers and sisters of the world.
Yeah. I really don't know what the answer is.
Sure.
The only answer is we don't have a lot of control over what other countries do, but we need to control what ours does.
Exactly. Well, lead by example. I mean, that's half the battle, right? And by leading by example could be, well, we take care of our own first. And once again, it's whether you like President Trump or you didn't like President Trump, that the America First agenda worked. We were helping our own out, and now they can't even get a bill passed for infrastructure, except but they had to hold people over on a Friday night, and they passed a bill late at night. That's how just unhealthy our government is right now. Is they can't even agree on roadway issues.
Right, and that's what you just said about America First. That's another language thing for me. Nationalism is not a bad thing, right? Nationalism means pride in your country and your culture, which is what we celebrate, allowing other people to do when they come here. Celebrate who you are, where you came from, but you're American.
But that's been linked to a white supremacist, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they've flipped nationalism. They kind of connected it to white nationalism.
Right.
So when people now, after being exposed to the media spin on it, now you hear nationalism, oh, it's a bad word. That's what they've done to the language. And that's,
to be patriotic is to be racist now. And it's so odd to me. The lieutenant governor in was it PA or New Jersey? The female, what's her name? She was just elected. Oh gosh, it's eluding me.
Virginia?
Yes, Virginia. They're calling her a racist. No, she's a middle-aged Black woman. And she was elected.
Yeah, she's the one that was taking pictures, like holding the rifle. And,
right,
yeah,
exactly. She's and come on, how absurd can we get till normal Americans are like, all right, this is enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the fact is that media is trying to cover all that up. There are so many, several races and people from different backgrounds, but so many Black conservatives that are sick of all of the bullshit, and people just open your eyes. I mean, how do you feel about what's happening and what direction we're going in? Do you think that enough people are finally waking up?
I wasn't, but I'm starting to see it. A lot of it has been exposed due to critical race theory and all the school board. The people that are speaking out at their school board meetings now that's gaining momentum.
Right.
And I think that's helping to, kind of expose things, and that's growing, and that's giving me some hope.
And how do you feel about So the federal mandates and now all of the lawsuits that were filed within the first 48 hours.
I think like many of us, I, get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, but and I'm not anti-vaccine, but I think you should have a choice. I'm anti-mandate.
That's exactly what we say. And because this is how we don't get nuked on all of our social media pages. So I'm going to put out this disclaimer. We're not telling anybody that's listening to not get the vaccine. If you want the vaccine, get the vaccine. What we stand against on the Hall of Mears is being forced to put anything in your body you don't want.
Well, we're all freedom of choice. And my question was not about the vaccine itself. My question was, I guess, was what do you think is going to happen with these lawsuits? Do you think this mandate is going to be dead in the water, or do you think it's actually going to, make it?
I think it depends how, I would assume the court system depends how far up it goes or which court hears the cases.
Because people think it's in, like it's a must, but it's not.
It hasn't been, yeah.
No.
Right. There's already been stays put on it. I believe California actually did a stay. I think California, San Francisco, I believe, was the first city to mandate it with the children. And I believe there's already a stay on that.
Yeah, I would say I don't even know if that's legal. So if anybody's listening, we're not giving advice. We don't care if you get it or don't. But if you're one of the ones that feel like, oh, there's a mandate out now, I have to get it. That's not true. It's not finalized. Nothing's done. Just do your research. Listen. It's not a federal mandate yet.
The problem is, though, a lot of these, like all the police that have had to leave because they're,
refusing.
Well, they've drawn the line in the sand and said you cannot work. That's their own mandate, and I don't know whether that's tied to the federal one or whether they've just decided.
Well, what they're firing them. It's funny how they're using some wordsmithing when they're getting rid of those police officers, when they're putting them on no pay statuses. They're not dismissing them for not getting the vaccine. They're dismissing them for insubordination. So isn't that curious that they're just playing around? It is what it is, but they're going to play this legal game with verbiage on why, whether they're insubordinate. Well, why? And then you get to the root cause of the insubordination. But
police officers aren't the only ones.
No, they're not. But a police officer's guidelines and procedures is a book probably 12 inches thick, and with policies and procedures and whatnot. So if this doesn't come to fruition and they can't get rid of a police officer based upon the vaccine for insubordination, they're going to find a way to get rid of the police officers. It's just, unfortunately, that's the society in which we live. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and right now they're hanging their hat, the administrative powers that be, on insubordination, failing to follow general orders.
Well, we have still to this day, the Chicago police union president came out and is still saying, if you don't want it, don't do it. We have across our country nurses leaving, doctors are leaving, teachers are walking away. There's enough people walking away. This has to disrupt our economy. It has to disrupt our way of life. What is going to happen? I just feel like that, they're poking a sleeping bear. I'm just waiting. What is going to happen? I thought it would have happened already, but.
Well, we spoke about this before, is that you might be able to convince me to get a vaccine. And I've said this before, you threaten my livelihood. I've got, a family that I have to support. You might be able to coerce me into getting that. But I really think the line in the sand is if you tell me I have to vaccinate my child.
Yeah.
When you put that on me, that's when a lot of eyebrows, that's when people start to speak up, because, what do Americans want? They want to go to work. They want to provide for their family, and they want to be left alone. They don't need government involvement. And
it's one thing to tell me what I need to do, and I have to make that decision. But when you force me to do something to my kid,
there it is.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I think this may have been an overplay on the hands of the powers that be. is mandating it. And maybe that's why we won't necessarily see it. San Francisco, arguably one of the most liberal cities in the country, right?
Yeah.
If not the most liberal. So that's probably their beta test to see what happens. If you're talking, once again, rabbit hole, conspiracy theory, new world order stuff, that, you know, there's got to be a beta test somewhere to see the public's response. So I don't think it's a coincidence that San Francisco was the first state first city to mandate this.
That's interesting.
Sorry, Lauren, we didn't mean to go down that
Sorry.
that tangent. I was just wondering, you know, how you felt about, you know, where the government was going and with this. I didn't mean to get on that whole vaccine talk. But.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think this, you know, the more people, it's, you know, putting people in situations they never thought they would be in, and people are showing courage, and I think that inspires other people, and we're at a turning point.
Right. You know, if you think of society in the United States as a pendulum, I think we've swung so far left that we can't possibly swing any farther. So we've got to come back towards the middle. And I think right in this time frame right now that we're starting to pivot back towards the middle. I think the elections in Virginia, it was a huge statement of how fed up Americans are.
I'm still. Is New Jersey a done deal? I know he was holding out. Are they doing a recount? What? As
far as last night that I saw, they're still trying to flesh that out.
Didn't they find 12,000 ballots? Did I read that?
Well,
they found 12,000.
Someone posted the voting machine, the touch screen that they're trying to click on Republican, and it wasn't reacting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a done deal yet. So we have that,
and that gentleman he's a truck driver, right? That's going against the incumbent Democrat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So even if he loses,
we're not in New Jersey.
No, the truck driver won.
Oh, the truck driver.
Yeah, that's a rat.
Okay.
Yeah. That's in another state.
Yeah.
What was that? Where was that at?
I forget what state it was, but I think he spent like $160 on his campaign.
Yeah, actually, I dug into that. He actually spent about 10 grand. But that was what everyone was saying. It was, you know, arguably it was a cheap campaign.
That was New Jersey. That was for the Senate seat.
The Senate seat in New Jersey. Okay. But even if it came up then, he ended up losing. I mean, just the amount of votes he got.
Ed Durr is his name.
Ed Durr, right? Should be a warning, a shot across the bow that, look, we need to start thinking about our citizens first, because everything, it seems like every vote has to be like either you're one side or the other. And it's what's good for, no one's thinking about what's good for us as Americans right now. It really does seem like they're trying to line their own pockets for it, and you know, they're beholden to their special interests.
Before I forget, you're talking about the pendulum, and that's maybe correcting coming back. I think another piece that's going to have a shockwave is the Rittenhouse trial and what's happening with that. I mean, it's not looking good for the prosecutors. They kind of shot themselves in the foot. You've reported on it, you've been watching, right?
I've been have one ear to it.
But I mean, the witnesses they called, I mean, made them look foolish. And it looks like Rittenhouse is going to walk. So the question is, you know, how is the left going to react? Is it going to be forgotten? Or is it going to be a big victory for the people that
see? I know what you're saying, and I have a different take on it. I don't think there's a good outcome for that. Guilty or not guilty, I don't think there's an outcome that's advantageous. Reason being, I personally believe that Rittenhouse is a mentally troubled kid. I really think that.
Oh, I don't.
And I feel that he's been made to be somebody that he's not. He's a kid with that may be overzealous, that might have some tendencies that
He was only 17 though.
Right. Exactly. And you know, where was his mom? I wouldn't let my
I
17-year-old
don't disagree
go
with that.
to Minneapolis from Chicago area, right? With an AR and say, all right. So I see some issues that I don't think that, do I think he should be convicted of murder? No, I think if he wouldn't have shot, honestly, he would have been dead. He would have been a
Right.
statistic.
It was self-defense.
I really do believe that. However, I think to make him a poster child for freedom of movement, I think once again, I think that's too far extreme to the right.
Well, I wasn't saying make him a poster child. I just said I think it's going to have some kind of effect. And this pendulum you were talking about.
It's going to affect it. Ultimately, there's going to be more riots in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Where is it? No, Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin. Yeah, there's going to be. Yeah.
You said you think he's mentally.
Yeah.
Something. I don't know how you put that together, but I think, you know, he was absolutely patriotic, and we just started watching cities burn for I don't know how deep we want to get on that.
No,
I don't want to go too deep, but you know, he felt a sense of duty. I don't think he went there with intent to kill people. I think he, you know, they went there to protect businesses, and I don't think he knew what he was getting into.
So maybe me saying mentally ill isn't the right word. That's not the right phrase. I believe that I try to think back to when I was 17 years old. And, you know, if this was happening in my time, first and foremost, my mom would probably shoot me before letting me leave the house or something like that.
But that's the thing, man. We didn't have to worry about that.
We didn't have to.
It was a completely different world.
But try to get into the psyche of 17-year-old Randy, right?
Yeah. I was ready to go. I took my ASFAB and I was ready to go to the Army.
Okay, well,
because 9/11 shook me, and I still have like PTSD from 9/11.
Okay, I guess I understand. This is why we enjoy this conversation, because we have these banters, and it seems like we're arguing, but we're not.
Yeah,
we enjoy each other's perspective.
I've been with I'm 37. I've been with my wife for 20 years. And she's the reason why I didn't go into the military. The sole reason. I'll never forget when the Army recruiter came to my house and I didn't tell my dad, and I invited him for dinner. So I wanted to be an Army Ranger. That's how. That's where my mind was.
17-year-old me, I was a volunteer fireman, and I just remember I want to run into the house fires, but not to put out the fire, because that's not what was my mentality. I got to break shit. I got to break windows out, and
no, I get
so
that.
I'm thinking, you know what I mean? So what was the motive for that? Hey, I get to go be part of this militia and carry a gun. I don't know if the mindset was there.
Well, I don't think it was a militia thing. I think it was, hey, I need to go, you know, we need to protect these businesses, because even in small town Indiana, and we were only in 90 minutes from where this location was, right. We'd never seen it here. We had people organizing in the hundreds and bashing out windows and businesses that we shop to every weekend.
Right.
And they're just looting and stealing shit. And for what?
Right.
Any injustice. I mean, you shouldn't have to hurt businesses and families and livelihoods. That doesn't solve problems. And we were watching people destroy businesses. There's other ways to solve problems. And so I can see his sense of duty saying, hey, we need to go. No one has seen this since the 60s.
Right.
I mean, you weren't alive. I wasn't alive. So I could see his sense of duty saying, hey, we got to go.
I respect that opinion. I do.
Know, that's all. That's where I'm at.
And he was well trained. He didn't,
right,
shoot somebody just with a trigger finger. He was being attacked. I mean, he used some self-restraint.
How well trained can a 17-year-old be, though?
I guess
depends on where you come from,
right? Well, yeah, I get, I take that for granted. You're right. Nope, you guys are right.
For an example, my wife's family are hunters. They're 2A people. They are shooting a gun at 6 years old.
Right.
It's so. I mean, I can't. I mean, I could see where a lot of America can question that. You know, how well trained can he be? But out here in the Midwest, folks, that's a way of life. Even down south, that's a way of life. So
yeah.
It's
people train their kids. That's the difference between the pro-gun people. They teach their kids safety from day one, so that they know what not to do. And I don't know the extent of his training, but it's possible. It's been years that He's been around, and one of the concepts of gun safety is you never pointed at somebody like Alec Baldwin.
Right.
Oh man, we could get on that too.
Right.
But Mike, just to get back to our banter, I have to say that I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the outcome of this might be a great thing. But I mean, let's think about this. I mean, we haven't seen this happen.
Right.
It happens. A kid who defends himself in the street, especially in the thick of the 2A, and like we have all these mass shootings and stuff.
Sure.
But here's an example of self-defense in the public eye.
Here's why. Here's why it's not going to be a good thing. Because if he is found not guilty, every media outlet except probably Fox News is going to slant that and incite more riots.
If it was not, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. There were, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but this was all white.
Sure.
White on white.
Yeah, it wasn't a racial component to it.
If there was a racial component to it, I could see that.
They already added a racial component to it. They already said he's part of a white national. Am I correct?
Yeah,
they reported that he was.
But what does that have to do with white on white?
Because you can just say that.
I know, but it's dumb.
Why is the lady that was elected in Virginia a white sympathizer or a white racist when she's a middle-aged black lady? I mean, there is no, and I think that's my fear is there's no sensical thought to what happens now. It's however the media can spin that story to get more clicks, to get more likes.
We're being held hostage by the media. People hesitate to do things because, the media is going to say this. Well, I think we're at a point now where we can't do it that way. We kind of have to do the right thing and say the right thing, no matter what the media says, and then try to get the truth out there, because I've said it before, we're living in two parallel knowledge universes.
Right.
And there's no exit highways, the crossovers from one path to the other at this point. And at some point, the truth common sense and the truth need to prevail.
That's a key term right there that doesn't exist in anywhere, is common sense.
Well, and herein lies the problem, is that if Rittenhouse is found not guilty, I really fear that's only the beginning of his story, because then the Justice Department's going to come in and there's going to be civil rights. He's going to be arrested for civil rights violations. And then the IRS is going to come in, and then mom's going to be, arrested for tax evasion somehow.
So you think they're going to come at him they're going to find something?
I think the mentality of our justice system right now is, if it doesn't go their way the first time, there is no double jeopardy. I feel in today's political climate, they will charge them whichever way they can.
Well, I think
until they get that conviction. Would you agree with that? I mean, they're doing that with the Minneapolis police officer. Look, he was found guilty for kneeling on George Floyd's neck. He found guilty of murder. He's now getting charged by the feds, and the IRS has just charged him and his ex-wife for tax evasion.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, they've already buried this guy.
Well, did he
but now
evade?
they're trying to bury him even
Did
deeper.
he evade the IRS?
They're saying so.
Well, I haven't looked into it. But listen,
let's face it,
he was already going to prison.
He's already in prison.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean,
But now,
what does it even matter now? It's out of his
but
control.
they're doing it.
I know.
So imagine a guy that gets off.
But that's not, like, I feel that's where the hostage term comes in, right? It's that the intimidation to shut you up,
Sure.
which for many of us, that is the reason to get it out there and fight it, because that's the option, is to back down and shut up and never fight for it again, or try to at least get the truth out. And you know what I mean?
I think everything happens for a reason. I think that kid was there for a reason.
It could be, but I think it comes down to individuals like us. We are at such a disadvantage Reason being, if we set out truths that aren't popular, we will be deplatformed, right? Look at what's the gentleman O'Keefe from Project Veritas.
James O'Keefe.
Yeah, he was just raided, right?
Yeah.
The feds just raided him, and because of the Biden daughter's diary or whatnot.
And
So-
I'm gonna just hold that thought just to tell listeners what we're talking about. I don't have all the details, but what I have read so far is that diary written by Biden's daughter, suggests that Biden had raped her. That's what I read. Do some research. I don't have the facts on that, but that's just the headline that popped up.
Now you're utilizing the FBI to raid a journalist house and those of his coworkers over a diary.
This is Russia stuff.
Right.
You know?
Right. that it's terrifying. It really is terrifying when you think about that.
Like I've told people before, listen, invest in a good VPN for your computers. Lauren, I don't know if you listen to any of our podcasts, but after I did the Emily Rainey piece, they got into my cell phone.
Oh, get out.
Yeah. So we did the Emily Rainey piece. We published it, and the night it was published, I'm sorry guys for hearing this again, but I want to tell Lauren, I leave my phone on at night. I went to bed at 10:30. At 12:33, someone entered my phone and did a screen recording. I don't know if you have an iPhone or not, but there's an option for screen record. And they went into a subfolder or a cluster of apps and opened up, or they showed like where my alarm system for my house was, where my cameras are in my house, and I had my notes in that. And they kind of messed around for a solid minute, and then ended the screen recording. And so when I woke up on my phone, it said screen recording saved to photos at 12:33 a.m. And I like totally freaked out. I was so uncomfortable. Texted Mike at like 5 a.m, said, "Hey man, I think my phone's tapped." He's like, "You got to call Emily." I called her like 7 a.m. And she said, "Yeah, they've been in my phone. They've been watching me." She said, "Because you've texted me, they're probably looking into you and building a case against you." So people, like Lauren said, it's kind of like some Russian stuff. Yeah. Invest in a good VPN. If you're a reporter or doing any kind of work like that, have multiple hard drives, back up your work. Don't keep it laying around. This goes for anything. I'll go like off the deep end, financial information, whatever it is, your valuables, think about a place for them, because we're seeing this happening. People getting raided, people, their privacy is being invaded. Protect yourself.
I think the most curious thing is when Randy called Apple to.
Yeah, I did. I called Apple.
They said there's no way possible that could happen.
Well, I've had law enforcement. I've had law enforcement tell me, and military people tell me otherwise, that they can get into any iPhone anytime they want.
So,
Wow.
it's terrifying, right? It's absolutely
And
terrifying.
by the way, when I called Apple, I could tell there were a bunch of young folks. I'm talking, they sounded teens or early 20s. And there's just no way they would know that information. I honestly, I feel ashamed for even trying to get through to them, but I was legit freaking out. That's when I bought the Faraday bags. If you don't know what Faraday bags are, they're pouches you can put your electronic devices in. They block all signals in and out. I'm not like, it sounds all nutty and stuff, but until it happens to you, it is the most uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, you're violated.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm not a criminal. I don't have anything to hide. So that's the part where I'm like, well, I don't really give a shit. But at the same time, when you feel violated, it gets to you, it irks you a little bit.
And you don't want them to use any of that and cause you problems with, whatever could happen.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when
Actual
you think about planting stuff or whatever, but like, again, I'm not a criminal. I don't have anything to hide. What do they find in my phone? Pictures of my children.
Yeah. I mean, like identity theft and things like that is what I would worry about.
Yeah.
Well, and I really think it is more of a message. If anything was being sent, hey, we can do this. I really do think it was a warning, a shot across the bow per se. However, this podcast has always been, we just want to get perspective. We don't even agree amongst ourselves sometimes on topics, but it's pertinent information that just for some reason, why is what we're putting out so intriguing to others? That they would feel compelled to let us know that we're being watched.
So Lauren, we started the podcast 2 years ago, but COVID hit and we took a huge break and we weren't sure where we were going. But my wife's a nurse, and when these mandates started coming out, and towards the beginning of the year, I had made a post that went viral, over 600,000 shares, pertaining to nurses, and they were holding up signs about last year's heroes, this year unemployed, and so we started talking to nurses and telling these stories, and our audience just exploded. And so my vision of our podcast was completely different, where I wanted to go with it. But like you wanted, you never thought you'd be a journalist, but here you are. Your articles are absolutely amazing. I told Mike, I'm like, man, I think she's been doing it. She's a lifelong journalist. I honestly didn't know you just started.
He said that.
Yeah, I said that.
Thank you so much.
I'm like, I think she's been a journalist for like 20, 30 years. And so when you said, oh yeah, I just started in February, I was like, oh man, Mike's probably like, but no, I'm honestly, your writing is top notch. And so like you, here we are, and I am absolutely in love with telling people stories, because just the reaction from people watching or listening, and knowing that we've made a difference in some ways. Like I feel compelled to keep going down this path, even though this is, I thought we'd have a guys podcast or talk about pop culture or sports, but here we are.
Right. And the amount of people that said until they've seen our podcast, they thought they were alone. It really resonates with us, because we specifically with the nurses that are losing their jobs, just inundated with messages saying, thank you. I thought I was in this alone. And we've networked and made connections with people across the country, across the world, honestly.
Yeah, we have, it's pretty cool. Look at the statistics I can share with you one time.
But just the contacts we were able to forge, we're on the right path. And I don't think we're going to be deterred anytime soon. And we're just going wherever the wind takes us.
Well, you're doing really good work. And I know it's frustrating, because we have this parallel, you guys and myself and others that are, just trying to get facts out there. It's worth it. Every once in a while, you're frustrated most of the time. You feel like nobody's listening, but every once in a while something happens, and it makes it all worth it. And I have a phrase that I use at the bottom of my email that says, something about, using our voices together makes them louder, and I feel I'm one of those people that believes we are thrown into some of these situations for a reason. And like, I consider meeting you guys one of them.
This is a conversation we've had so many times. Like, wow, we cross paths with people for a reason. There's no other explanation.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful, and it gives me goosebumps. Like right now I have goosebumps, because just like Mike said, the relationships we've had, that we forged, and it's so amazing.
Two middle-class guys from Northwest Indiana, speaking with a prestigious reporter in Pennsylvania right now.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
I thank you so much for joining us.
I thank you so much for all of your kind words. Prestigious is, I'll try to live up to that. But I really, really appreciate the opportunity, and I've loved meeting you guys.